Thank you for joining me in the podcast, The Ignorance of the Masses, brought to you by Matthew Shane Summernesky. In this podcast, I will be discussing various topics related to the occult, in such contexts as movies and literature. I will also be discussing the topic of astrotheology and syncretism. I hope that you enjoy listening to the podcast and everybody can learn something together. Thank you for this opportunity. Have a great day. How's everyone doing? So I've actually been researching this for some days now. It's actually been some pretty thick research, but I'm actually looking into the word Nebuchadnezzar and the Naboo, but I'm also relating this to the word fig tree. Now, I'll show you how this is all linked, but we'll go through the verses in the Bible and just show how many. There's actually 54 occurrences where the word fig is mentioned in the Bible. This is mentioned in Judges 9, 10, 11, where it goes to say, "Then the tree said to the fig tree, 'You come, reign over us.' But the fig tree said to them, 'Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go to wave over the trees?'" In Numbers 13, 21, 23, "So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin, as far as Rehob and Lebo-Hamath. When they had gone up into the Negev, they came to Hebrew, where Ammon, Sheshach, and Talmah, the descendants of Anak, were." And it says, "Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and from there cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men, with some of the pomegranates and figs." It says in Numbers 25, verse says, "Why you have made us come up from Egypt to bring us into this wretched place. It is not a place for grain or figs, or vines or pomegranates, nor is there water to drink." Now, when it says stuff like this in the Bible, this isn't to be taken completely in a literal way. I mean, there is figurative ways and literal ways to take this, of course, because it has a both civil low, but the higher spiritual concepts of this, when you hear this word, to drink, for example, it's not really speaking of water in the sense that most individuals think of water. It's talking about spiritual waters, and this is talking about prana. And when it says, "You have made us come up from Egypt to bring us to this wretched place," this is talking about a loss of consciousness, is what it's talking about. It is not a place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates. There's no fruit. Okay, so this is actually talking about when one descends back into gross matter. In Deuteronomy 8, 7, 9, you have it go on to say, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs flowing forth in valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land where you will eat food without scarcity, in which you will not lack anything, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you can dig copper." In Samuel 30, 11 through 12, "Now they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread and he ate." It says, "And they provided him water to drink. They gave him a piece of fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins. And he ate, then his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water in 3 days and 3 nights." In those days I saw Judah come, who were treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sacks of grain and loading them on donkeys, as well as wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads. And they brought them to Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I admonished them on the day they sold food. Samuel 25:18, first concepts. Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves of bread and 2 jugs of wine and 5 sheep already prepared and 5 measures of roasted grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. 2 Samuel 16:1. Now when David had passed a little beyond the summit, behold, Zibiah, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them were 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a jug of wine. Goes on in Chronicles 12:40. Moreover, those who were near them, even as far as Ishkar and Zebulun and Naphtali, brought food on donkeys, camels, mules, and oxen, great quantities of flour cakes, fig cakes, and bunches of raisin, wine, oil, oxen, and sheep. There was joy hidden in Israel. And when you hear even that word Israel, it's actually talking about the higher mind. So whenever you, I just want people to keep in mind when I use that word in a certain context,